Hey, this is Warren Redlick. There's some great news going on with Tesla, and I feel like people haven't talked about this enough. There's news about Dojo, and there's news about Optimus, and there's news about Tesla AI. Some really big developments, and I'll talk a little bit about 4680 as well. Let's get into it. Are you ready? Let's go. And of course, Be Less Wrong t-shirt, and I'm giving you the Bangkok skyline. This is not central Bangkok.
There's training and inference, and we do have those two projects at Tesla. We've got Dojo, which is the training computer, and then our inference chip, which is in every car, inference computer. And Dojo, we've only had Dojo 1. Dojo 2 we should have Dojo 2 in volume towards the end of next year.
Distinguish between training compute and inference compute. Tesla has been accumulating a lot of NVIDIA H100 GPUs, which do training. They've been developing Dojo, which does training, and then there's inference compute in the car. There's a huge difference between training compute and inference compute. I think a lot of people don't understand the difference, so let's just talk about it a little bit. The chip in the car uses very low power. Maybe it's just not a lot of power. I think it's maybe 300 watts, and I think the newer one might be 500 watts or 700 watts for the AI5 chip coming later. All it does is it reacts to photons coming in. Photons come in, it uses the training that it gets from the training compute to decide how it's going to react. It's not like it's making conscious decisions. It's just like the data comes in, it processes it through inference compute, which is the neural nets in the car. Just say, okay, photons in, controls out or turn left, turn right, go faster, go slower, stop, whatever, turn the signal on, that kind of thing, lane change. Those kind of decisions. The training compute, those chips use much more power. The training cluster, they're talking about, I think, 100 gigawatt hour or 100 megawatt. I forget. There's these monster training compute clusters that they're building at Giga Texas, and they have a big cluster in California. I think they may have a big cluster going up in Buffalo as well. Those use a tremendous amount of electricity, like, 1 million times as much electricity. Maybe 500,000. And those data centers take all the data from all the cars, and they use some algorithms, use some other things, use some of the team figures out how to do this, and then that develops the training that is then sent down to the inference chip. So the inference chip in the car, relatively small, relatively low power chip. And same thing for Optimus, by the way. Inference chip in the robot, whether it's a wheeled robot car or a legged humanoid robot. The inference chip is responding to the data that comes in. The training compute is responding to all the data from all the robots out there and figuring out where are the flaws and how can we make it work better. Okay, let's update the training. And that's how it works. He mentioned Dojo 1, which is the thing that we've seen. And he mentioned that Dojo 2 is coming soon. Dojo 2 will be a more advanced set of training compute. It's not that they think NVIDIA isn't good. It's just, can they get enough chips from NVIDIA to be able to do what they need to do when there's so much demand for NVIDIA chips? And it may be that by continuing to develop Dojo, they will develop useful AI that won't necessarily be a competitor to NVIDIA, but it will offer a different kind of AI training compute that maybe NVIDIA doesn't offer, or it'll be better in certain areas. Because Dojo is focusing on training on video data. NVIDIA's chips have to be more broad, and they have to be able to train large language models which are focused on text. Just as one example. So having it specifically focused on real-time video data coming in and making those decisions, it's just a different challenge. So having a chip that's optimized for that might be better. And of course, NVIDIA has like an 80% profit margin. So if you can make a chip that's almost as good and it costs you half as much or twice as much to make it as NVIDIA, after the profit margin, you're still saving money by going with your own chip.
And Dojo, we've only had Dojo 1. Dojo 2 we should have Dojo 2 in volume towards the end of next year. And that will be, we think, sort of comparable to sort of a B200 type system.
The most popular NVIDIA chip right now has been the NVIDIA H100. The B200 is coming. I think they call that Rockwell. So the goal is for Dojo 2 to be roughly competitive with the B200, the chip that NVIDIA is coming out with. So by the end of next year, we should have Dojo 2 running at scale. By then, maybe NVIDIA will have a new chip that will be better than the B200, but Tesla, I think, is catching up, and maybe they'll never surpass, but if they get close enough, that may be worth doing. And it's a huge investment, but it may be worthwhile. And considering the amount of money they're investing in NVIDIA hardware for training clusters, it matters. And also connecting the training compute to the inference compute in the car, because Tesla has its own specific inference computer in the car. The new cars are driving hardware 4 or AI4 chip. The AI5 chip is coming. So designing your training compute to work specifically with your inference compute is very different from what everyone else is doing. And so that's why optimizing for Dojo makes a lot of sense.
So I guess there's some potential for that to be used as a service. I guess I have like some improved confidence in Dojo, but I think we won't really know how good Dojo is until probably version 3. Like, it usually takes 3 major iterations on a technology for it to be excellent. And we'll only have the 2nd major iteration next year.
Dojo 2 will be roughly competitive with the B200, but really the next chip after that is the one that will be really competitive. And then, you know, in theory, if there's so much demand for AI training, it may be that Tesla would be able to sell services like that with Dojo 3 at that point. And also, as Tesla generates enough AI training, as it solves the self-driving problem, after it's solved the self-driving problem, then it's going to need a massive amount of training compute for the robots. And I think the training for the robots, for the Optimus robots, that's, you know, a 10-year plus task. And you're going to need as much compute power as you can, because there's so many different things to train the robots to do. But it may be that they have surplus compute that they can offer to other people. I think the thing that people don't realize is, yeah, they could sell AI training as a service, but their demand for AI training as a service for their robots, for Tesla's own robots, is going to be so high that I don't think it's an important business for Tesla to get into. And Elon has talked about in the past, the inference chips might be useful compute they can sell to others when your car's not going anywhere. If your car's sitting in a garage, you know, maybe you can sell inference compute, and maybe each car generates $500 in revenue a year, and you get to keep 300 and Tesla gets 200. You'd probably let Tesla use your chip for that, right? If you were going to get some money out of it. Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. And maybe there'll be fleets and there's downtime and they'll be used at those times. But I think that's not essential to the prospects for Tesla in the long run.
The 3rd iteration, I don't know, maybe late, 26 or something like that.
So Dojo 3, maybe late 2026. That's pretty impressive to be iterating that fast. I think we can take Elon with a grain of salt on that and say, all right, maybe Dojo 2 will really be early 2026 and Dojo 3 will be mid 2027. We'll see. You know, this may be one where he's more in tune with the timelines and things may be more lined up. Hard to know the answer to that.
The Optimus project going, I remember when we talked last, and you said this publicly, that it's in doing some light testing.
We're going to talk about Optimus in a minute. First, I want to cover one other thing. Tesla's AI account on X released a roadmap for where we're going with FSD. So we just covered Dojo and the inference chip computes a little bit. This is the current status and near-term future for FSD improvements. So we see FSD version 12.5.2 in September. We're in September now. I think they may have started shipping that on a small number of cars, and they're claiming 3 times improved miles between necessary interventions. So this is the metric. Like, it's not miles between interventions where you intervene because you don't like what it's doing, but an intervention was necessary because something bad was going to happen. I think it'd be interesting to know, what is the definition of necessary intervention and how do they define unnecessary intervention? But regardless, I think they are measuring this in a way and they are seeing massive improvement. So we've got that coming, as well as on the AI3 chips, unified models for AI3 and AI4. And this is an important topic as well. So many people have been talking about, oh, when is Tesla going to do FSD for hardware 3, which is the chips in the cars from, say, 2023 and before. And it varies by car. And then this, when are the Cybertruck going to get it? There's all these issues. And the reality is, look, they have so much training compute. They're focused on what they're focused on. They have a schedule. Cybertruck, for example, is a low volume vehicle, so you don't focus on that right away. You focus on the highest volume vehicles first, and then you figure things out. And there's been multiple posts from, I think, Karpathy talked about it maybe, but he's not even with Tesla anymore, but Ashok Elaswamy, and I've seen James Dalma talk about this. There's people who are saying, oh, hardware 3 won't be good enough to be able to handle FSD, as FSD improves. It's like, no. There's plenty of room to optimize the software to work on the hardware 3 chip. Multiple people have been saying that. And then you've got people who don't understand AI saying it won't work. I'm going to go with the people who understand AI and the people on the team over a random non-AI person who says it won't work. some Tesla Q nut or somebody who's just a crank. Okay, actually Smart Summon is coming. That's where you press, your car will come pick you up from the parking lot, or it'll go park itself after it drops you off. You do have to watch it, but it's actually gotten much, much better. Cybertruck Auto Park is coming. Eye tracking with sunglasses. One of the issues that people have been complaining about is it used to be you had to have your hands on the wheel. They've updated it so you don't have to have your hands on the wheel, but you still have to watch the road. And then there's a challenge of, if you're wearing sunglasses, can the car tell if you're watching the road? And they're improving their AI on eye tracking to be able to see while you're wearing sunglasses if you're watching the road. And then end-to-end network on highway. I think this is, finishing off some tweaks here and there in getting every part of the car operating on the same model. There may have been some aspects of FSD on the old model that still worked better than the current FSD, the new FSD. And then getting FSD on Cybertruck coming, which, should be coming this month. If it has, I don't think it's happened yet, but I think it's coming soon. Anyway, this is a timeline. This isn't from Elon. This isn't Elon time. This is Tesla's team time. Now, maybe something will get pushed by a week or two or a month or so, but I think a lot of the stuff is going to happen on the time frame they're talking about. Now, October 2024, Unpark, Park, and Reverse in FSD. Cool. Version 13, this is going to be huge. Version 13 with 6x improved miles between necessary interventions. What they didn't say is that 6x compared to 12.5.2, or is that 6x compared to whatever was before 12.5.2? But regardless, this is very, very substantial improvement. Great stuff. And then Q1 2025, we may see FSD in Europe and FSD in China, pending regulatory approval. I'm betting on China giving regulatory approval quickly, and Europe dragging their feet, because Europe just drags their feet on everything. But, we're seeing substantial improvement in FSD, and we're seeing a little bit more clarity from the Tesla AI team, so that's great to see. And now let's talk about Optimus.
How's the Optimus project going? I remember when we talked last, and you said this publicly, it's in doing some light testing inside the factory. So it's actually being useful. What's the build of materials, and when, for something like that at scale? So when you start making it like you're making the Model 3 now, and there's 1 million of them coming off the factory line, what would they cost? $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, you think?
I've discovered that anything made in sufficient volume will asymptotically approach the cost of its materials. So some things are constrained by the cost of intellectual property and paying for patents and stuff. So a lot of what's in a chip is paying royalties and depreciation of the chip fab. So, but the actual marginal cost of the chips is very low. So Optimus, it obviously is a humanoid robot. It weighs much less and is much smaller than a car. And I'd say that you also probably need three production versions of Optimus. So you need to refine the design at least three major times, and then you need to scale production to sort of the 1 million unit plus per year level.
And he's going to come up with a different number than I come up with, but if a Model 3 costs around $30,000 to make, and it weighs 1,500 kilos, 1,400 kilograms, or 3,500 pounds, something like that, and an Optimus robot weighs 125 pounds, so 1/20th the weight or less of a Model 3. That's a whole lot less materials. So I would guess if you got $30,000 to build a Model 3, you're talking about less than $5,000 to build an Optimus robot, because that's 1/6. It's still much more than 1/20th. I think Elon's going to come up with a number like 20. And important detail there, he mentioned 3 production versions of Optimus. I believe we're close to the first version. I think he's going to give us a timeline for the 3 versions. But on version 3, production version 3, we may be up to 1 million a year of Optimus. So that's pretty amazing. So let's go further and hear what he has to say about that.
The labor and materials on Optimus is probably not much more than $10,000.
Yeah, and that's a decade-long journey, maybe?
Basically, think of it like the Optimus will cost less than a small car.
Right.
At scale volume with 3 major iterations of technology. And so if a small car, costs $25,000, it's probably like $20,000 for an Optimus, for a humanoid robot that can be your buddy, like a combination of R2-D2 and C-3PO, but better.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think people are going to get really attached to their humanoid robot, because you look at you watch Star Wars, and it's like R2-D2 and C-3PO. I love those guys. They're awesome, and their personality, and all R2 could do is just beep at you. Right. And couldn't speak English.
I think that's an important point that people miss is about Elon is that, he seems so technical or he seems so political. And here you see like a very human side of Elon talking about the reality that everybody likes R2D2 and R2D2 just beeps. Optimus is going to be much more engaging. And, you sort of think of Optimus as going to be kind of like a mix of, going to look a lot more like C-3PO than Optimus. But it's probably going to be very friendly and pleasant. And he says people will get attached to them. And he came up with, he said $10,000, then he said $20,000. I think Tesla's production cost will be significantly less than $10,000 when they get to 1 million units a year.
If you did 2 or 3 years per iteration or something, it's a decade-long journey for this to hit some sort of scale.
I would say major iterations are less than 2 years, so it's probably on the order of 5 years, maybe 6 to get to 1 million units a year.
Important timeline there. Again, we may be in Elon time, but he thinks an iteration every less than 2 years. I think if he said 5 years from now, he's saying that production version 1 is coming soon. And my theory is that we're going to see production version 1 of Optimus. And I don't mean production ready, but this is the prototype that will be the production effectively, or this is a production intent version of Optimus that they're going to start manufacturing at some scale. And they're going to reveal that on October 10th, which is, maybe 3 weeks away, 3-4 weeks away. We're going to see a new version of Optimus that is, really close to what they're going to make at some scale. Now, that's not going to be made at large scale. It's not going to be sold to a large number of customers, but that's, and I think primarily the first version will be used by Tesla in its factories. I've been a proponent of Tesla should sell them to the public. And I think I've heard enough now, maybe it was Karpathy in an interview who said, you can't really sell it to the public right away because he thinks there's too many liability issues. I think he said you don't want it, to fall on grandma or step on grandma or something like that. I don't know. I tend to think, yeah, you could probably sell it to customers early and there's a lot of value in that. But anyway, we have a timeline of 5-6 years to 1 million units a year. We are in 2024 now. So by 2030, we may see 1 million units a year. In terms of Tesla stock, when does the stock market react to Optimus and the value that it delivers? Well, it's probably when the first Optimus goes to a customer. It's also possible that it's when there's significant numbers of them working in factories and you can demonstrate that it's lowering the cost of goods sold, right? If you've got Optimus working in Tesla factories and you actually can show cost of goods sold is falling, that would reflect on the stock price, not for selling Optimus or leasing Optimus out, but for the value that it's generating there. But I think probably by version 2, which you're probably talking about 2-3 years away, you're going to see those robots sold to other customers. And once you have a business model showing, hey, we have revenue, we have cost of goods sold, we have profits from these bots, or we can see where the profits are coming from in the future, that's when the Wall Street types are more likely to react to, okay, we get it now. I don't think most of Wall Street will get it. The Barry Glacks of the world are not going to get it until it's got an actual revenue line and an actual cost of goods sold, and you can see margins and things like that. Even though they won't really understand it at that point, that's a point where it comes along.
Everybody can afford one on planet Earth. I mean, it's going to be that 1-to-1, 2-to-1. What do you think ultimately, if we're sitting here in 30 years, the number of robots on the planet versus humans?
Yeah, I think the number of robots will vastly exceed the number of humans.
Vastly, yeah.
Vastly exceed. I mean, you have to say, like, who would not want their robot buddy? Everyone wants a robot buddy.
Totally.
I'm a little touchy on this one subject here, which is who would not want one. And I'm sitting here in Thailand. And the average income in Thailand is something like $7,000 a year nationwide. And Thailand is sort of a middle income country, really. I think Vietnam is poor. There's a number of, Bangladesh is poor, Philippines is poor. So in a country like the United States, you say you're going to get this amazing thing for $10,000. Well, then, lots of people can afford that. There are a really large number of people here living on, say, less than $500 a month. And maybe even less than that. So there's a very large share of the world's population that $500 a month, $5,000 a year income, buying a $10,000 robot is not really on their list of things to do. So the idea that everyone's going to have a robot is probably a stretch. Maybe there's some way in which it becomes more available to larger numbers of people, or you can finance it and the productivity gains from it. pay for it. But I think it's a little bit of a stretch. Now, do I think the volume of robots are overall will still be, more than 1-to-1 to humanity? Yeah, because they'll be used in companies. They'll go to space. There's lots of opportunities for, and wealthy individuals might buy 5. And I mean, wealthy people in wealthy countries. If you're moderately wealthy, if you have $100,000 a year income, and you have free cash, you might buy more than one. You might have other things for them to do. I don't know the answer to that, but I think that's a possibility.
It can take care of take your dog for a walk. It could, mow the lawn. It could watch your kids. It could, it could teach your kids. It could.
We could also send it to Mars.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can send a lot of robots to Mars to do the work needed to make it a colonized planet for humans.
And Mars is already the robot planet. There's like a whole bunch of robots, like rovers and
only robots.
Helicopter. Yeah, it's only robots.
Yeah.
So there you have it. Robots on Mars. Optimus is going to Mars. I actually think that the first cargo launch to Mars, and I'm going to do another video shortly about SpaceX and some things Elon revealed about Starship. But robots going to Mars makes a lot of sense, and you could see a 10-to-1 ratio of robots to humans on Mars. Because the thing is, the robots can work outside. Humans need to be protected in an atmosphere. The robots don't need the atmosphere. The robots will operate. They're not going to be as vulnerable to the outside as humans are. So they probably will be able to operate on Mars. There already are robots operating on Mars. So that makes a lot of sense.
No, I think the sort of useful humanoid robot opportunity is the single biggest opportunity ever. Because if you assume that, I mean, I think the ratio of humanoid robots to humans is going to be at least 2-to-1, maybe 3-to-1. Because everybody will want one, and then there'll be a bunch of robots that you don't see that are making goods and services.
And you think it's one generalized robot that then learns how to do different tasks, or?
Yeah.
Hey,
I mean, we are a generalized.
Yeah, we're a generalized non-robot.
We're just made of meat.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is something I disagree with Elon, and I'm not sure he's being completely straight with us, or I don't mean he's lying, but maybe he's missing something here. I think there are clear use cases where you want a robot that isn't in humanoid form. My favorite example is roofing. Not that Optimus wouldn't be able to do work on a roof, but the volume of work that needs to be done on roofs globally is really high. The nature of that work, the slopes, the risk of falling, the type of work that you're doing, I think that's something where you might have a specialized robot. And I'm pretty sure somewhere in the past, someone from Tesla at an event mentioned other friendly robots. So I think there may be other form factors that will be coming. But with that said, maybe the dominant form of robot will be humanoid, and maybe that's what he means.
It turns out, as we were designing Optimus, we sort of learned more and more about why humans are shaped the way they're shaped. And why we have 5 fingers, and why your little finger is smaller than your index finger. Obviously why you have opposable thumbs, but also why, for example, the muscles, the major muscles that operate your hand are actually in your forearm, and your fingers are primarily operated the muscles that actuate your fingers are located. The vast majority of your finger strength is actually coming from your forearm, and your fingers are being operated by tendons, little strings. And so the current version of the Optimus hand has the actuators in the hand, and has only 11 degrees of freedom. So it doesn't have all the degrees of freedom of human hand, which has, depending on how you count it, roughly 25 degrees of freedom. And it's also not strong enough in certain ways because the actuators have to fit in the hand. So the next generation Optimus hand, which we have in prototype form, the actuators have moved to the forearm, just like a human, and they operate the fingers through cables.
So that's what I was talking about. For October 10th, they already have a prototype form of the next Optimus robot, and it has the actuators in the arm rather than in the hand. So they're learning as they go how to make a better robot, and so they're going to a next generation robot. And I think it's a reasonable prediction that we're going to see this prototype probably production ready or close to production ready on October 10th. October 10th is Cybercab. It's not specifically about Optimus, But I think there's a really strong chance we're going to see Optimus at this, and we're going to see the new version, and it's going to be amazing.
And then the next generation head has 22 degrees of freedom, which we think is enough to do almost anything that a human can do.
And presumably, I think it was written that X and Tesla may work together and, you know, provide services. But my immediate thought went to, oh, if you just provide a grok to the robot, then the robot has a personality and can process voice and video and images and all of that stuff.
So that's important that grok will be on Optimus and grok will probably be in the car. There's an important distinction, though, that the inference chip that is in the hardware 3 and hardware 4 cars is not designed, it's designed to drive the car. So you're probably going to have to add some other hardware, and maybe the AI5 chip will be able to do it. Maybe the chip that's coming will be able to do this. And, you know, the production 2 version of Optimus will probably be in time for the AI5 chip. I think he said somewhere else that the inference hardware in the car is not designed to run large language models. It makes sense that you would incorporate some kind of large language model in the Optimus bot in the car as well, and that's probably coming. But I wouldn't expect that too soon. And there are other people who think, well, you'll use an LLM to control the whole robot. No, FSD, Tesla's real-world AI, is what's going to control the robot. There may be some value in having an LLM on board as well. In my next video, I'm going to talk about 4680 and Tesla Semi and how that translates to a massive amount of revenue and profit for Tesla in the not too distant future. And I'm going to be doing a video about SpaceX, Starship, and the prospects for getting to Mars and how things are looking better in some ways and not so good in other ways, but we'll see. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're on the X platform, please keep following me or start following me. Maybe subscribe to me here, become a YouTube channel member, Patreon supporter, the Daily Lie, warrenredlick.locals.com. Any support is appreciated. And check out the t-shirts at elonbits.com. We're always trying to be less wrong. We're always wrong, and we should strive to be less wrong. And that's an Elon quote, of course. elonbits.com for the t-shirts. Thank you so much for watching.